Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again with your late night creature feature. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where are you listening from tonight? Alone in your room? Driving through empty roads? Drop a comment and let me know. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's see what tonight's tale brings us. 4 studio albums that sold maybe 6,000 copies combined, most of those to the same 500 people who showed up to every show within driving distance. Regional success, they called it. Which meant people in West Texas knew his name and people everywhere else didn't give a damn. He played every honky-tonk from Marfa to Amarillo, opened for Wade Bowen, Randy Rogers, Corey Morrow, and even Kevin Fowler. He'd written songs that other artists cut, made a little publishing money, just enough to keep the bus gassed and the band fed. He'd been on Texas Monthly's Artists to Watch list in 2008. That was 17 years ago. Nobody was watching anymore. Anne-Marie drove because Anne-Marie always drove. She was 45, dark hair going silver at the temples, and she'd spent 22 years married to a man whose best days were always just ahead and never quite here. She booked the shows. She negotiated the door splits. She made sure they ate meals that had at least one vegetable in them instead of truck stop burritos 7 nights a week. She was the steel frame holding up the tent. Without Anne-Marie, Sage would have drunk himself to death in 2009 when the 3rd record tanked and the label dropped them. She was the reason he was still breathing. He told her that once, in a motel in Lubbock, drunk on Lone Star and self-pity, she said, "I know, now drink some water and go to sleep." That was Anne-Marie, everything that mattered in as few words as possible. Magnolia Burns rode shotgun, tallying receipts on her phone with the flashlight app because the dome light had been dead since Abilene, tour manager. 51 years old, lean as jerky, gray hair in a braid, a mouth that could strip paint off a barn at 40 yards. She'd been with Sage since the 2nd album, back when they thought a showcase in Nashville might mean a thing. It didn't. She stayed anyway. When Sage asked her why, years later, she didn't even look up from the receipts. "Because you're the best songwriter in Texas and everybody else is too stupid to notice." She said it flat, the same tone she'd use for, "We're out of gas." Just a fact. Not a compliment, not a kindness, just what she believed, and you could take it or leave it. Magnolia kept her eyes on the receipts. Baton Rouge better show up. "They will," Anne-Marie answered. "Last 3 shows didn't. Baton Rouge isn't Sulphur. Baton Rouge has an actual music scene. Sulphur had an actual bar. Didn't stop only 9 people from showing up. One of them was the bartender. 7. Sage corrected from the passenger seat. 2 of those 9 were us." Magnolia turned her head slowly and stared at him. "That's not the win you think it is." Colt Harlan sprawled across the back bench with his Telecaster across his lap, picking out a bridge melody. 34, sharp jaw, easy grin, the kind of charming that got him into trouble at truck stops and out of trouble with bartenders. He'd grown up in Odessa playing football until a torn ACL ended that conversation, then picked up a guitar and found out he was better with 6 strings than he ever was with a pigskin. He was the best lead player Sage had ever worked with. He was also the most annoying human being Sage had ever shared a bus with, which was saying a lot for a man who'd toured Texas for nearly 3 decades. "Y'all hear this bridge?" Colt asked, grinning. "This is the one, Sage. This is the hit." Sage didn't answer. He'd been hearing about the hit since he was 23. "I'm serious. Listen." Colt played the riff again, bending the notes on the high strings, eyes half closed, head bobbing. It was good. It was always good. That was the problem with Colt. He was genuinely talented, which meant you couldn't dismiss the rest of him without losing the music. Anne-Marie didn't turn around. "It's good. Play the whole thing when we stop." Colt grinned wider. "See? Anne-Marie gets it." "Anne-Marie's driving," Magnolia snorted. She'd agree with a rattlesnake if it kept its voice down. Boone Carter sat behind Anne-Marie, quiet as a closed door, 42, built like a brick wall with a sunburn. Hands scarred from 15 years working oil rigs in the Permian Basin before Sage convinced him to quit and drum full-time in 2019, promising him a life better than 12-hour shifts in 110-degree heat. That promise was looking thin. Boone never complained. He never said much at all. When he did talk, people listened, because Boone only opened his mouth when the words were worth the air. He just sat there with his hands on his knees, watching the dark water slide past the window. When Boone hit the kit, you felt it in your ribs. He played drums with the same focus he'd brought to a derrick, steady, dependable, the heartbeat that kept everything else alive. Ryder Knox leaned against the window with his bass propped between his knees, youngest of the crew at 31. Grew up in Thibodaux, down in Lafourche Parish, where the bayou runs through everything and the Cajun French floats through kitchens and corner stores. He joined the band 5 years ago when their last bassist overdosed on fentanyl-laced heroin in a Motel 6 outside Amarillo. Ryder was solid, kept his head down, didn't drink much. He knew the bayou like Sage knew the desert, respectfully, with the understanding that it could kill you if you forgot your place. My granddaddy used to run trap lines out here, Ryder said, nodding at the water sliding past. Said there's places you don't go after sundown, places where the lights move in ways they shouldn't. Colt snorted. Your granddaddy also thought the government put tracking chips in Budweiser cans. Ryder shrugged. He wasn't wrong about everything. Survived Katrina when half of Thibodaux went under, lived to 92. Maybe he knew things the rest of us don't. Like what? Magnolia cut her eyes at him, like when to stop talking. That got a laugh from everybody except Colt, who pretended to be offended for about 3 seconds before going back to the bridge melody. The Telecaster hummed through the bus, warm and electric, and for a minute the 6 of them were just a band on a road, doing what bands do. Arguing and laughing and pretending the money didn't matter when the money was all that mattered. Anne-Marie glanced at the GPS. Next town's Bayou Sorrel, 30 miles. Gas? Magnolia asked. Enough to make Baton Rouge if we don't stop. Sage gripped the wheel tighter. Then we don't stop. The Baton Rouge show was their last real shot. If they packed the room and sold enough merch, they might scrape together enough to keep going another month. If not, the bus went back to the church. The gear got sold. Sage would go back to Terlingua and find work at the general store or the bar, and Anne-Marie would pick up bookkeeping for one of the ranches outside Alpine, and they'd grow old in a ghost town telling stories about the time they almost made it. Almost. The saddest word in the English language when you put it in front of something you wanted with your whole body. Sage stared out the window. The swamp pressed in on both sides of the road, cypress trees rising from black water, moss hanging from every branch in long gray curtains. The fog crept across the asphalt in sheets, and the headlights carved maybe 40 feet before the white wall swallowed them. The radio crackled, some Cajun station playing Zydeco, then it died mid-verse. Anne-Marie twisted the dial, static, tried her phone, no signal. Magnolia squinted at the GPS, middle of nowhere. The blue dot sat on a gray line surrounded by green. No towns, no gas stations, just road and water and trees. The dash threw a warning light. The engine coughed. The engine coughed again, rattled, and died. The bus coasted in sudden, heavy silence. Anne-Marie pumped the brake and guided them onto what passed for a shoulder. She killed the headlights to save the battery, and the dark closed in around them. Magnolia was already moving. Popped the hood. They climbed out into wet heat. The air hit like walking into a mouth. Thick, humid, blood-warm. Mosquitoes rose from the water in clouds. The smell came next. Rotting leaves, stale mud, and underneath both a sweetness that wasn't flowers, sweetness that came from things breaking down. Sage swatted at his neck, and his palm came away bloody. Boone propped the hood and studied the engine like a wellhead under pressure. poked belts, checked hoses, pulled the dipstick. After a minute, he shook his head. Fuel pump, maybe. Could be the alternator. Can't tell without tools. How far to the nearest town? Sage asked. Magnolia checked her phone. No signal. She held it overhead and turned in a slow circle. Nothing. Last sign said Bayou Sorrel, but that was 20 miles back. We got a spare fuel pump? Colt asked. We got duct tape and prayer. Magnolia closed the hood. We've toured on worse. Nobody laughed because it was true. They stood in the road, 6 people and a dead bus, surrounded by black water and trees that leaned in too close. The fog thickened until they could barely see 10 feet. Somewhere in the swamp, frogs started up, then stopped, all at once, cut off mid-croak. The silence after the frogs was worse than the silence before them, heavier, loaded. Y'all see that? Ryder pointed down the road. A light hung in the distance, steady and warm, a porch lamp glowing between the trunks, maybe a quarter mile off. Magnolia pointed. Civilization. Could be a house, Anne-Marie added. Somebody with a phone. Sage stared at the light. It looked right. It looked human, but there was a quality to it he couldn't name, a steadiness that felt less like electricity and more like intention. Like the light wasn't shining, it was waiting. They killed the bus lights. Flashlights clicked on, 4 thin beams cutting the fog, 6 shadows stepped onto the road, boots crunching gravel. The sound echoed too loud, bouncing off the water on both sides. The frogs didn't start again. They walked for 10 minutes. The light didn't get closer. Sage counted his steps. 100, 200, 300. The light stayed the same distance ahead, steady, warm, promising help just around the next bend, except the road ran straight. No bends, no curves, no reason for the distance to hold. The light slid sideways sometimes, drifting left through the trees, then right, then back to center. The road was flat, no hills, no turns, but the light moved through the cypress trunks with a lazy purpose that had nothing to do with perspective. "How's that light moving?" Boone asked. Colt glanced back over his shoulder. Maybe it's not moving. Maybe we're walking crooked. But the road was straight. Sage could feel it under his boots. He'd walked drunk down more roads than he could count. He knew what crooked walking felt like. This wasn't it. Anne-Marie stopped and turned around. "Look." Behind them, the bus should have been visible. Maybe not clearly through the fog, but the shape at least. The outline. Nothing. Fog and trees and water. "How far have we walked?" she asked. "Quarter mile, maybe less." Boone stopped walking. Should still see the bus. Nobody said the obvious thing. Nobody said the road's not working right. Saying it would make it true, and none of them were ready for that yet. Ryder glanced at the ditch running alongside the road. The water sat black and flat, reflecting nothing. Not the sky, not the trees, not the flashlight beams. Just black, bottomless. "Few follet," Ryder said. "Ghost lights. Granddaddy said they lead you into the swamp and leave you there. Said they're either lost souls looking for company, or lures set by things that live in the water, things that feed." "What'd he say you're supposed to do?" Sage asked. "Don't follow them. Don't trust them. And if you hear your name called from the water, that's not your friend. That's never your friend." The words sat in the humid air. Nobody laughed. The road narrowed. Water crept onto the asphalt, pooling in ruts, seeping through cracks. Their boots splashed. The sound carried too far, broadcasting their presence to whatever was listening. Sage's flashlight beam caught a shape ahead, tall, thin, bent at the spine at an angle that wasn't natural. It stood at the edge of the road, just outside the reach of the light. He swung the beam toward it. Trees, moss, water. The shape was gone. He didn't say what he'd seen. He didn't need to. Anne-Marie's hand found his arm and squeezed hard enough to leave marks. The air thickened until breathing took effort. Heat pressed down. Sage's shirt stuck to his back, his neck, his chest. Sweat ran into his eyes. He wiped it away and tasted salt and iron. They passed a wide spot in the ditch where the water opened into a pool. The surface was smooth and unnatural, perfect as poured glass. The light danced across it, broke apart into a dozen smaller lights, then reformed into one. A whistle drifted through the fog, 3 notes, repeated with a pause between each phrase, thin and lazy, almost friendly, almost human. Almost. Ryder's face went pale. Loup-garou country. What's that? Colt asked. Rougarou, some folks call it. Old Cajun. Follows you if you break your Lenten fast. Gets in your house if you don't bless the door. Mama made us mark the threshold with holy water every night. We're not in a house. Sage kept his voice steady, mostly. That's the problem. Out here there's no doors to bless. Magnolia checked her watch. The face was fogged. She wiped it on her shirt and checked again. We've been walking 40 minutes. That light hasn't moved, not 1 inch closer. So we turn around. Colt was already facing the other direction. Turn around to what? Anne-Marie asked. We can't see the bus. We don't know where the bus is. So we keep walking toward a light that doesn't get closer. Or we stand here in the dark. Nobody wanted to stand in the dark. They kept walking. The swamp sounds had changed. The frogs were gone. The insects were gone. Even the mosquitoes had thinned. The small things had cleared out, vacated the area before whatever was coming arrived. The only sound was their boots on wet asphalt and the slow drip of condensation falling from cypress branches into the ditch. Each drip hit the water and the water didn't ripple. It absorbed the impact. Swallowed it. Sage noticed that the trees had gotten taller, where the road had gotten lower. The cypress trunks rose on both sides like walls, the canopy meeting overhead in a mesh of branches and moss so dense that no sky showed through. They were walking through a tunnel, a living tunnel that breathed and dripped and watched. Boone walked at the rear of the group, turning every 30 seconds to sweep his flashlight behind them. On the 4th sweep, his beam caught something on the road surface. He stopped. Boone crouched at the edge of the road. Tracks. They gathered around. Boot prints in the thin layer of mud on the asphalt. 6 sets, going in the direction they were walking, fresh enough that water was seeping into the treads. Their own tracks, from ahead of them, on a road they hadn't reached yet. Nobody said anything for 10 seconds. The ditch water didn't ripple. The fog pressed closer. Magnolia's voice went tight. Could have looped. The old man told us the road loops. We haven't turned. Anne-Marie shook her head. Not once. The road's been straight. The tracks continued ahead of them for another 50 yards, then disappeared where the asphalt dipped under a sheet of standing water. On the other side of the water, the road continued, clean and unmarked. Their tracks were ahead of them and behind them and nowhere in between. They crossed the standing water. It was shin-deep and warm, and it didn't feel like water. It felt thick, aware, as if the road itself were testing their weight, deciding whether to hold. On the other side, the light was waiting. Same distance, same warmth, same promise. The light went out. Every hair on Sage's arms lifted. The dark closed in, absolute. For 3 seconds there was nothing. No light, no moon, no stars. Just 6 people standing on a road that might not be a road anymore, breathing air that tasted like iron and mud. Then the light flashed behind them, close, so close Sage could feel warmth on the back of his neck. They turned, boots skidding in the mud, flashlight beams ripping through Spanish moss, tearing shadows from cypress trunks, catching a shape between the trees, tall, too tall. Joints moving at angles that didn't make sense. The smell hit, sulfur, rot, and underneath it a sweetness that shouldn't exist, a sweetness that came from nothing good. The whistle came from everywhere. Above, left, right behind Sage's ear. Then it stopped. Magnolia grabbed Sage's arm hard enough to bruise. "Keep moving, now." They moved, not quite running. The road curved for the first time since they'd started walking, and the house surfaced from the fog. Cypress board walls, blackened with age, tin roof sagging in the middle, rusted through in patches, windows dark and open, the porch tilted, boards missing, the whole structure leaning left, the ground underneath giving up. On the porch, an old man rocked in a cane-back chair, barefoot, feet gray with dried mud that cracked at the ankles, skin thin enough to see veins. Overalls with no shirt, chest sunken, ribs showing through. He was whistling that same tune. When he saw them, he stopped. His mouth split into a wet pink grin, toothless, gums the color of liver. "Well now," he rasped, "past midnight walkers." Anne-Marie stepped forward, hands raised. "Sir, our bus broke down about a mile back. We just need a phone, a tow truck, anything." "Ain't no phones round here," the man said. "Ordinary. Obvious." The chair creaked with each slow rock. The sound was rhythmic, steady, the beat underneath everything. "How far to the nearest town?" Magnolia asked. The man didn't look at her. He was staring past them, into the trees, watching a thing they couldn't see. He pointed with 2 fingers, nails long and stained dark. "Back the way y'all came. About a mile, maybe mile and a half if y'all step light." Ryder blinked. "No, sir. We came from at least 3-4 miles back." "A mile," the man repeated. His eyes were filmy, but they tracked movement perfectly. "Road loops sometimes. Brings folks back around. You go now, you'll find it." Sage peered past him into the house. No furniture visible through the doorway, just shadows and a sheet nailed over what might be a back room. The sheet swelled outward, then settled, then swelled again, slow and rhythmic, pushed by a breath that didn't belong to any person in that house. "Sir?" Magnolia tried, voice softer now. "You got water? Anything to drink?" The old man's smile slid off his face. His jaw worked, gums moving, chewing on nothing. He stared past them into the dark for a long time, long enough that Sage thought he'd forgotten they were there. Then he said, "Don't tarry." The light bloomed again down the road, closer, warmer, so normal that Sage felt relief open up in his chest before his brain could stop it. The old man tasted the air between his gums, made a wet clicking sound with his tongue, sighed, long and sad. "They like them new songs," he murmured. 5 words. 5 words that changed the shape of the night. 5 words that Sage would hear in every hotel room and every recording studio and every sold-out venue for the rest of his life. Then the man rocked faster, chair creaking double time, eyes wet in the dark. "Best you don't stop," he said. "No matter what y'all hear, don't you stop, don't you look back, and you better not answer when it calls." "What calls?" Anne-Marie asked. He lifted a hand the color of old roots, held it up flat. "Don't look too long at what ain't yours." He started whistling again, frantic now, the tune running together, the melody itself a gate that had to stay closed. Magnolia grabbed Sage's sleeve. "We're going." They went. Behind them, the whistle kept time with their footsteps. When it stopped, everything stopped. The wind, the water, even the mosquitoes froze in place. The whole swamp held its breath. They took 10 steps past the house. "Ryder?" Sage looked back. Nothing. No answer. "Ryder?" Anne-Marie called, louder, voice climbing. Flashlight beams swept the road, boot prints in the mud. 5 sets going forward, but only 4 continuing. 1 set veered off into the ditch and vanished where the water started. No splash marks. No struggle, no sign of entry, just gone. as if Ryder had walked to the edge of the road and stepped into the water like stepping through a doorway, calm and deliberate, following something that called him by name. Then Ryder's laugh rang out from the trees, high and easy, with that little hiccup at the end he always got when a joke landed right, coming from deep in the timber where the light pulsed slow. "Sage." Anne-Marie gripped his arm. "He's in there. We have to go get him." Ryder's laugh twisted. The pitch changed, went wet and gargled, played through a throat full of swamp water, then it cut off. Silence. Sage started toward the sound. Every instinct in his body pulled him toward the trees, toward his bass player, toward the kid from Thibodaux who knew the bayou and should have known better. Magnolia caught his arm, fingers digging in hard enough to leave bruises. "No. He's right there, Mags." "He's gone," she said. Her voice was flat. "Final. A locked door. We stay on the road. We keep moving. We can't just leave him." "Yes, we can. We have to. That's not him laughing, Sage. You know it's not." He knew. He knew, and he hated knowing. Boone lingered at the ditch's edge, staring into the dark where Ryder had disappeared. His hands were fists, his jaw tight. After a moment he nodded once, some roughneck benediction, some oil-rig prayer for the dead, and turned to follow. A shape moved parallel to them in the reeds, tall, keeping pace. Branches snapped at shoulder height, 8 feet up, 9. Not deer, not boar, not anything that walked on 2 legs and stood that tall. Colt swung his flashlight toward the sound. The beam caught 2 pale shapes hanging among the leaves, eyes, round and flat, reflecting nothing, absorbing the light instead of throwing it back. They watched without blinking, then they shut off. "Okay," Colt breathed. "Okay, okay." Magnolia grabbed Colt's shoulder. "Don't run. Running makes you prey." They ran anyway. Through fog that clung to skin and clothes and lungs, the road looped, stretched, folded back on itself. Sage's lungs burned. His boots hammered asphalt. Behind him, Anne-Marie's breath came in ragged pulls and Colt was muttering, prayer or curse, hard to tell which. Boone stopped so suddenly that Colt crashed into him. Boone held up a fist. Hold, head tilted, listening. The same focus he'd brought to wellheads under pressure, ears tuned for the groan of metal before it buckled. They all heard it, water churning fast, rapids hitting rocks, a roar that came from nowhere because the ditch was calm and the road was dry. The roar swelled until it vibrated in Sage's chest, and then a shape unfolded from the ditch and stepped onto the road. Thin, too thin, limbs wrapped in slick grass and muck, held together with sinew and bad intentions, bones visible through the hide, a spine that curved in a direction spines don't go. The head was long, crowned with antlers wrapped in Spanish moss, trailing vines. The face was a white mask stretched over nothing, smooth and featureless except for the eyes, round, dull, empty. It tilted its head, joints clicked, pop, pop, pop. Boone didn't scream, didn't freeze. 15 years on, oil rigs had burned the freeze reflex out of him. When a pipe blows, you don't stand there. You move, you act. You do the thing that needs doing, or you die. He swung. His fist connected with the thing's midsection. The impact felt like punching a wet log. The creature swayed, bent at the waist, straightened. It regarded him with those empty eyes, tilting its head the other direction. His violence was a curiosity, a new sound to catalog. Then its arm lashed out, too fast for its size, and hooked Boone under the arm. Boone's boots left the ground, 230 pounds lifted without effort. The thing carried him to the ditch in 3 smooth steps and lowered him into the water, neat and unhurried, placing him gently, almost carefully. The water closed over Boone's chest. He thrashed, got one hand on the road's edge. Sage dove and grabbed his wrist with both hands, Anne-Marie grabbed Sage's belt and pulled. For a moment they held, Boone's eyes locked on Sage's, 6 inches apart, close enough to see the blood vessels breaking in the whites. The water pulled harder. Boone's fingers slipped, one by one, ring finger first, then middle, then index. His hand raked the mud and found nothing to hold. He surfaced once, one hard gasp of air, one choking prayer, Jesus Christ, garbled and wet, then a sound from below the surface, teeth closing, bone giving way. Green branch sounds, wet and structural. Boone went under. The water churned dark for 3 seconds, then it went flat and still. The shape on the road straightened, watching them. Colt yanked Sage by the collar and ran. The ditch behind them made sounds for 5 more seconds, grinding, chewing, a mouth with too many teeth, taking its time with a man who deserved better. Then quiet. They ran, 300 yards, maybe 400. The fog parted and closed behind them. Colt stumbled. His boot caught a ridge in the asphalt, and he went to one knee, flashlight skittering across the road. As he reached for it, the light appeared, not ahead this time, not behind. Directly in front of Colt, hovering at chest height, warm and golden, so close he could feel heat on his face. Colt reached for it. Reflex. The same reflex that makes you grab a railing when you fall, the same reflex that makes you reach for a hand in the dark. Hope is a reflex. You can't train it out. His fingers passed through the light. It reformed behind him, and the road opened. Not the ditch. The asphalt itself. The surface split beneath Colt's knees, a seam appearing where no seam had been, widening into a gap that showed nothing underneath. Not dirt, not water. Just black, a black that breathed. Colt scrabbled backward. His hands slapped wet pavement. The gap widened. He looked up at Sage with an expression that wasn't fear. It was apology. The look of a man who knows he's about to leave and can't do a damn thing about it. "Tell my mama I was good," Colt said, clear, calm, as if he were asking someone to pass the salt. The road swallowed him. It closed over Colt's head the way water closes over a stone, sealed, no crack, no seam. Just blacktop, flat and wet and undisturbed, as if a 34-year-old man with a torn ACL and a Telecaster and the best set of hands in Texas had never existed at all. Then the sound of chewing, from under the road itself. 3 seconds of it, wet, deliberate. Then nothing. Magnolia dry sobbed once, furious at the noise in her own throat. She grabbed Sage and Anne-Marie by the arms. "Up! Move!" 3 of them now, 3 broken pieces of what used to be 6. The light drifted ahead, lazy and unbothered. Never too far, never close enough. It wanted them moving. It wanted them tired. It wanted them alone. They didn't know they were back at the old man's house until Anne-Marie stopped walking. The house had changed. The windows gaped wider. The porch tilted further. Boards cracked and bowed. The rocker was empty. The whistled tune drifted from inside a room that shouldn't exist, muffled and distant. The house had grown another room since they'd been gone, or swallowed one. Magnolia turned on her heel. "Back the way we came." "That is the way we came," Sage told her. The light swelled at the foot of the porch steps until the yard was bright and shadowless. False daylight. Stage lighting for a show nobody wanted to see. And in the false daylight, Sage saw them. A dozen tall shapes standing in the tree line. Antlers crowned with small flames the color of crawfish boil, shifting from red to orange, legs bent backward at the knee, shoulders knotted, chests narrow as fence posts, bellies slick with muck, mouths too wide, lined with teeth like broken shell and shattered bone. Their eyes didn't reflect the light. They drank it, swallowed it whole. One of them hunched forward and mimicked Ryder's laugh, perfect, down to the hiccup. Another said in Boone's voice, flat and calm, "Hold." A third hummed the old man's whistle, note for note. They'd been listening. The whole time the band had been walking and talking and fighting and dying, they'd been listening, collecting voices, cataloging sounds. Magnolia pulled the flare gun from her back pocket. She'd been carrying it since Amarillo, since the night they got robbed at a rest stop. She aimed high and fired. The flare popped red against the canopy. The swamp lit up. The thing stood in a crescent, arms long enough to drag knuckles through water, hide slick with moss, antlers scraped raw from rubbing bark. The flare light washed over them and they swallowed it. Gave nothing back. Magnolia fired the second flare straight at the nearest one. It hit center mass. The creature folded around the impact, hissed smoke from the wound, and kept walking. No blood, no scream, just smoke. "Sage," Anne-Marie breathed, turning to face him. "Look at me." He did. Her eyes were terrified and steady at the same time. "You're not done yet," she said. One of them separated from the rest, taller up close, 10 feet, 12 when it straightened all the way. Its mouth opened and kept opening, jaw distending until the throat was a tunnel lined with teeth. The breath that rolled out smelled like iron and spoiled meat and mud baked in August heat. Magnolia stepped between it and the Jennings. She planted her feet. 51 years old, 120 pounds, staring down a nightmare. Tears cut clean lines through the dirt on Magnolia's face. "Hey, you want country music? You want a tour manager who can book anything from a dive bar to a festival stage? Take me. I'm the best in Texas. Leave the songwriter." The thing tilted its head, a long, slow hiss. It pointed at Sage. No, flat, final. The whistle returned from the doorway behind them. The rocker creaked. The old man's voice floated out, paper thin and sad. "You got nothing it wants more than what you'll give it yourself, songman." Sage dropped to his knees in the mud, his hands pressed together until the bones ached, his wedding ring dug into his finger. He didn't pray to God. He wasn't sure he believed in that God anymore, the one his mama prayed to in the Methodist church in Alpine. That God didn't save his daddy from the mercury poisoning. Didn't save the first marriage. Didn't save the dream. He prayed to listeners. To everything that ever leaned in closer when a story started. To old water that remembers songs and old trees that learned the rhythm of feet. To whatever lived in the dark and was willing to make a deal. Sage's voice cracked. "I ain't got much, but I got a song. I got everything I know about loss and road and dust and blood. If you let them walk out of here, if you let them live, I'll sing what you want. I'll sing it right. I'll give you everything." The fog shifted. The light rose above them until it hung like a hole punched through the night. The thing bent low, joints clicking, and pressed one long finger against Sage's throat. Slow, measuring the instrument, testing the strings. Anne-Marie would not cry. She'd cried over Sage for 22 years, over his drinking, his despair, his conviction that he was born too late or too different for the world. She had no tears left, only steel. She leaned close, her breath warm on his ear. "If you do this," she whispered, "you come back to me. You hear me? You come back." Always, he meant it. The thing's hand opened. 2 more stepped from the trees. It happened fast. Anne-Marie was jerked off her feet. Magnolia lunged, got her arms around Anne-Marie's legs, held tight. A claw hooked Magnolia from the side and both women rose together, twisting in the air, fingers locked around each other. "Magnolia!" Sage screamed. Magnolia caught his eye. She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd survived 3 failed labels and 100 dead-end towns and knew exactly how the world worked. She kissed him. Quick, hard. Get famous, cowboy. A claw punched through her back. Her body jerked. Her eyes stayed open, defiant, even as the light behind them dimmed, even as her hands loosened on Anne-Marie's legs. She was lifted and carried into the trees, held up, displayed. Anne-Marie screamed. She clawed at the thing holding her, fingers raking mud and moss and hide, but it was like fighting a tree. She was dragged backward into the fog, still screaming Sage's name. The swamp swallowed the sound, swallowed her. Sage howled. The sound emptied him, left him hollow. He slammed his forehead into the mud and tasted blood and dirt and something metallic that might have been grief or might have been the swamp itself, leaking into him through every open wound. The nearest one lowered its head until its breath hit his ear. When it spoke, the voice sounded like a bullfrog dragged through a human throat, like mud given language. Sing, a song that won't stop. Give us everything and we will make you everything. Sage nodded, broken, bleeding, empty. I will, I promise, I'll give you everything. The light went out. Darkness. Then nothing. He woke on the bus. The engine coughed once and caught. It purred, smooth, perfect. The door hung open to the road. The seats were empty. His guitar case sat on the bench where Colt used to sprawl, the case latches open, the strings humming faintly in the still air, vibrating at a frequency Sage had never heard. Mud crusted the steps. The smell of iron and rot clung to the upholstery. On the driver's seat, Anne-Marie's reading glasses sat folded on top of the trip itinerary she'd printed at a Kinko's in El Paso. Her handwriting in the margins, little notes, call venue at 2, confirm door split, buy Sage new strings. The ink was smudged with mud. He closed the door, put the bus in gear, drove. He didn't remember the highway, didn't remember Baton Rouge. He only remembered the song forming in his head, note by note, word by word. Something very old whispering through the space between his ribs. Sage recorded Swamp Thang in a single take because he was afraid to stop, afraid that if he paused, the song would disappear. The session band played quiet, heads cocked, listening to frequencies that weren't on any chart. The drummer kept watching the corners of the room. The bassist asked if they could open a window. The engineer said the levels were behaving strangely, that the low end kept surging on its own, pulsing in a rhythm that didn't match the tempo. The pedal steel player crossed himself twice before the second verse. "What the hell was that?" the producer asked when it was done. Sage closed his eyes. "That's the one." The producer didn't argue. Radio stations fought for the first spin. KOKE in Austin played it first, then KPIG out in California, then stations in Oklahoma and Tennessee and Georgia. Number 1 on the Texas regional chart in a week. Number 5 on Americana. Number 12 on country. It stayed because people felt a thing in it they couldn't name. A scratch at the back of the brain that remembered forests before roads and songs before language. Everything Sage had wanted for 27 years dropped into his lap in 6 weeks. He stopped drinking, for a while, then started again, then stopped. The cycle repeated. Some days he was fine. Some days he couldn't stand up. Some days he sat in the bus, which he hadn't sold and couldn't sell and would never sell, parked in a storage lot in Austin, and ran his fingers over the seats where they used to sit. Colt's bench had pick marks in the vinyl from where he dug in during solos, playing so hard the plectrum punched through. Anne-Marie's driver's seat smelled like the lavender hand lotion she bought in bulk from a dollar store in Marfa. Boone's spot behind the driver had a permanent indent in the cushion from 12-hour drives across West Texas. Magnolia's receipts were in the glove box, gas stations from towns they'd never visit again. Burrito wrappers, a parking ticket from Fort Worth. Ryder's bass sat in its case in the overhead rack. Nobody had moved it. Nobody would. He tried to contact the families. Called Magnolia's sister in Lubbock, who answered on the second ring and said, "Tell me she's dead. Just tell me. Don't make me guess." Sage opened his mouth and no sound came out. He hung up and sat in the parking lot of a Walmart for 45 minutes with his forehead on the steering wheel. He never called the sister back. He wrote a letter to Colt's mother in Odessa, 3 pages, handwritten, explaining that there had been an accident in Louisiana and that Colt didn't make it. He didn't describe what happened. He couldn't. What do you write? Your son was swallowed by a road that opened up like a mouth. He wrote accident and bayou and I'm sorry, and sealed the envelope and mailed it from a post office in San Antonio. A week later it came back, returned to sender. No forwarding address, as if the letter itself had been refused by a world that didn't want the truth delivered. Boone had no family, no wife, no kids, no emergency contact on file except Sage. The storage unit Boone rented in Midland went to auction 3 months after he disappeared. Sage drove up and bought the contents for $200, a drum kit, a set of work boots. A framed photo of the crew from a show in Lubbock, the 6 of them grinning under a neon sign that said Rodeo Bar and Grill. Sage hung the photo in his apartment and couldn't look at it. Couldn't take it down either. Ryder's grandmother in Thibodaux was the only one who didn't ask questions. When Sage called her, she listened to his silence for a long time and then said, in Cajun French, that Sage only half understood, something that sounded like a prayer. Then she said in English, "He followed the lights, didn't he?" It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am," his voice barely held. His granddaddy did too, almost. Got 1 foot in the water before his brother pulled him out. Ryder didn't have a brother. She hung up. Sage never called her again either. He played the Troubadour in Los Angeles. Sold out. 500 voices singing the chorus back at him. But underneath the crowd, underneath the harmonies and the stomping feet and the bartender's blender, he heard a voice that wasn't in the room, low, wet. When it rose in the bridge, his hands shook on the fretboard. When the crowd cheered, he heard the old man's rocker creak underneath the applause, keeping time. Gruen Hall in New Braunfels came next, oldest dance hall in Texas. The floorboards vibrated under his boots and the sound bounced off the limestone walls, and for one verse, just one, he heard a bass line that wasn't coming from the stage, Ryder's tone. Ryder's pocket, clean and steady and coming from somewhere behind the back wall, from the other side of the plaster, from a place where the walls were thinner than they should be. Then the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. Sat on a stool in the round with 3 other songwriters, trading verses, and when it was his turn to play Swamp Thang, the room went so quiet he could hear the air conditioning click off. The other songwriters stared at him with expressions he couldn't read. After the show, one of them, a woman who'd written #1 hits for 3 different artists, grabbed his arm in the parking lot and said, "Where did that song come from?" "Louisiana." "That's not what I mean," she said. "I've been writing for 20 years, and I've never heard a melody that does what yours does. It gets inside people. It stays. My daughter's been humming it for 3 days, and she doesn't even listen to country music. It's catchy." The woman shook her head. "It's not catchy. Catchy is a hook and a beat. What your song does is different. It moves in, like it's alive, like it's looking for somewhere to nest." Sage smiled. Possum teeth. "I appreciate that." He told himself she was being dramatic. He told himself grief was a fever that took time to break. He said that to a journalist once, and the journalist wrote it down and put it in a profile piece for Rolling Stone, and people shared it online and called it profound. Sage read the quote on his phone in a hotel bathroom and laughed until his ribs hurt. Grief was not a fever. Grief was a ditch full of black water with no bottom, and he was treading it every night on stage in front of people who thought his pain was entertainment. In hotel mirrors, he caught antlers in the lamp glare behind his shoulder, just for a second. When he turned, nothing, but the rocker creaked anyway, and a whistle drifted through the air conditioning vent. That tune, always that tune. At night he dreamed of the ditch, except it wasn't a ditch in the dream. It was a throat, red and deep and endless. He hung above it, held by hands he couldn't see, and below him were lights drifting up from the dark. The old man's voice rose with them. "Don't look too long at what ain't yours." Sage tried not to. He looked into the microphone instead, into every dark room that held an audience, into every spotlight that blinded him to what waited just off stage. He sang. Between verses he heard them. Anne-Marie in the back of the house, hands cupped around her mouth, calling the key change. Key of E, baby. Take it up, and Magnolia's boots on the stage deck, running cables for the monitor mix, and Boone's sticks clicking the count, steady as a derrick pump, steady as a heartbeat. And Colt warming up with that little blues lick he loved, the one he'd been playing on the bus the night the engine died. And Ryder's laugh, that hiccup at the end, coming from just off stage, just out of sight, just behind the curtain where the dark started. He kept singing so he wouldn't hear the other sound, the slow grind from the ditch, teeth working in time with his tempo, a mouth keeping the beat. On a late-night talk show, the host asked what changed. Sage smiled. Possum teeth. I prayed for a listener. The audience laughed. That night he stood on the hotel roof, 23 floors up, the city spread below him, the river glinted in the distance, black and flat. He hummed the first bars of Swamp Thang without meaning to, muscle memory. A whistle answered from the shadows near the HVAC units. The tune was perfect. Sage didn't turn around. I'm keeping my end. No answer, but he felt it, the nod, the approval, the appetite that never filled. He went back downstairs, sat on the bed in his underwear and socks, took his guitar from the case. The strings were warm. They were always warm now. Someone else had been playing it while he was gone. The instrument itself had learned the songs before he wrote them. On the nightstand sat Anne-Marie's reading glasses. He hadn't packed them. He hadn't brought them from the bus. But they were there, folded neatly, the way she always left them. Beside them, a receipt from a Kinko's in El Paso with her handwriting in the margins. Buy Sage new strings. He picked up the guitar. He wrote the next song because they were waiting, and he'd promised, and a promise is a promise, even when it costs everything you have and everything you are. When he strummed the first chord, his fingers found a rhythm that didn't belong to him. The melody came from a place he'd never been, a place that smelled like iron and mud and standing water in August. The song came easy. Too easy. It was a door that opened when you whistled, and once open, it didn't want to close. Sage played until his fingers bled. Then he played some more. The hotel room was quiet. The city was asleep. But the guitar hummed between songs, low and steady, vibrating with a frequency that came from under the floor, from under the foundation, from wherever ditches run when they run deep enough. In the bathroom mirror, antlers flickered behind his reflection. He didn't turn around anymore. He'd stopped turning around in November, 3 months after the swamp, because looking didn't help. The antlers were never there when he looked. But the whistle was. 3 notes. Pause. 3 more, coming from the vent, coming from the walls, coming from the silence between chords when his fingers rested on the strings. He gave them everything, and they took it, and they waited for more. He'd write them another song tomorrow, and another after that, and another, until there was nothing left of him but the music. Until Sage Jennings was just a name on an album cover and a voice in a speaker and a man sitting on a hotel bed in his underwear and socks, playing guitar for an audience he couldn't see and couldn't refuse and couldn't stop feeding. The reading glasses sat on the nightstand, Anne-Marie's handwriting on the receipt. Buy Sage new strings. He'd buy new strings in the morning. He always bought new strings. And somewhere in Iberville Parish, on a stretch of Route 77 that doesn't appear on any GPS and never has, a porch light flickers on at midnight, a rocker creaks. An old man whistles 3 notes, pauses, and whistles 3 more. The road loops. The water rises. The lights begin to dance. They're always listening. They like them new songs. Well, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terror-ific tale from the vault. Poor old Sage thought he could trade a song for his friends' lives. How noble, how romantic, how absolutely spectacularly doomed. And that band, oh, bless their hearts. Magnolia with her paint-stripping mouth and her get-famous cowboy. Anne-Marie keeping the whole tent standing for 22 years just to get dragged into the fog. Boone who quit the oil rigs for this. Colt who finally found a hit in the wrong key. And Ryder, the Bayou kid who knew better than any of them and still walked into the water. Just how we fucking love it. Hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every day at 8 p.m. Central, and trust me, tomorrow's even nastier. Leave a like if you think Sage should have walked away from that bargain, and drop a comment. What would you trade for everything you ever wanted? Where are you watching from? I'm always hunting for the next nightmare. Until next time, kiddies, keep your fires burning and your eyes on the trees. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo. And hey, look on the bright side. At least Sage made it out. Got his record deal. Got his streaming numbers. Got his sold-out shows. Sure, he can't stop writing songs for things that live in ditches, and his guitar strings are warm when he picks it up, and he hears a whistle in every hotel room that knows a tune he never taught it, and his dead wife's reading glasses keep showing up on nightstands in cities she never visited. But other than that, living the dream. Totally, completely, absolutely living the dream. Sweet dreams, kiddies. Sweet dreams.